Thanks for being a paid subscriber to the Rip Current by me, Jake Ward. I'm doing a weekly audio roundup of posts from each week exclusively for paid subscribers. You are one of them. Thank you so much for being here. You'll have to excuse a little bit of the formal tone. It's obviously a little different from the way I would speak extemporaneously. And of course, these are news related. And so if the timing sounds a little off, that's just because things are moving really fast. The AI stock market crash is not an emergency. Here's what is. Is the bubble bursting? Has China won? Take a step back. We are worried about the wrong thing. Plus, Hillman Talk University is the best thing on the internet by Jacob Ward. The stocks of the big AI companies cratered this morning, and it really screwed up my day. I had a loose and experimental meditation all written up and ready for you about the importance of anticipating the unanticipated, but I had to shelve those hippie ramblings once news broke that Wall Street is punishing American AI giants like Meta and Microsoft. Why are those companies suddenly worth hundreds of billions of dollars less? Well, Chinese companies just debuted new reasoning and language models like DeepSeek V3 and Kimi.ai that rival the capabilities of American ones at a fraction of the cost and a fraction of the computing power, scrambling all expectations about what it takes to make effective AI systems. But I'm here to try to keep you from falling into the jingoistic tech panic that is about to fuel the political and business landscape for the next few months or longer, and to point you at some stuff that matters more. The AI industry is faith-based, typified by the venture capitalist and recently converted Trump supporter Mark Andreessen and his techno-utopian manifesto. There's a link to that in the article. Its adherents profess a belief that through technology like AI, quote, we can advance to a far superior way of living and of being, end quote. What exactly that superior future consists of and how we get there through for-profit companies is not clear. Instead, the industry seems to be saying, trust the vibes. Those vibes are full of contradictions. OpenAI founder Sam Altman's public remarks on the topic usually circle back on themselves and return to themes of faith. He told an audience at MIT last year that, quote, AI is going to eliminate a lot of current jobs, and there will be classes of jobs that totally go away. AI is also going to change the way a lot of current jobs function, and it's going to create entirely new jobs, end quote. Sounds rough, but that trade-off is worth it because, quote, if we could see what each of us can do 10 or 20 years in the future, note here near religious certainty, it would astonish us today. The Biden administration was intrigued by this sort of proselytizing, but not converted. And after issuing a sweeping executive order in October of 2023 that AI should be a national priority but must not harm labor, privacy, or trust in the truth, the president said, in the balanced fashion of an experienced lawmaker, that, quote, to realize the promise of AI and avoid the risk, we need to govern this technology. But those days of balance are over. President Trump does not strike me as a tech convert, but he seems to see no reason to stand in its way, and he rescinded Biden's order within hours of taking office and has spoken, if vaguely, about the need to preserve American tech dominance in the world. Fear of competition from China has long been a favorite tech talking point in trying to convince lawmakers to go easy on American companies. And in a 15-page, quote, economic blueprint published this month, OpenAI's policy chief lays out the rules and policies the company would like to see from lawmakers and cites the twin threat of losing both money and political clout to China. Here's an excerpt. With an estimated $175 billion sitting in global funds awaiting investment in AI projects, if the U.S. does not attract those funds, they will flow to China-backed projects, strengthening the Chinese Communist Party's global influence. Now, this week, those talking points have caught fire as Chinese AI burns the stock price of American companies and upends expectations about how AI is built and how much it should cost. DeepSeek, a lab backed by a Chinese hedge fund called Highflyer, released its open source model DeepSeek V3 the day after Christmas. The claims in its documentation must have made Altman's head pop off. Quote, comprehensive evaluations reveal that DeepSeek V3 outperforms other open source models and achieves performance comparable to leading closed source models. Despite its excellent performance, DeepSeek V3 requires only 2.788 million H800 GPU hours, I'll decode that in a second, for its full training. In addition, its training process is remarkably stable. As CNBC reported, quote, in a set of third-party benchmark tests, DeepSeek's model outperformed Meta's Llama 3.1, OpenAI's GPT-4o, and Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 3.5. Analysts estimate that Meta's model cost the company as much as $640 million. The Chinese lab says their DeepSeek V3 competitor cost less than $6 million. Boom. There goes Meta's share price, which sank 3% Monday morning. This morning, DeepSeek is number one in the App Store, displacing ChatGPT. And hey, there goes the share price of OpenAI's backer, Microsoft, which lost 4%. The price difference between American and Chinese models has to do in part with the chips. Remember that H800 GPU that was mentioned in DeepSeek's documentation? Well, that is a lower performance chip made by NVIDIA to satisfy export controls designed to keep the best chips out of China. NVIDIA has profited hugely off the expectation that AI companies will require their absolutely fastest and fanciest chips like the H100, which cost Meta as much as $40,000 a piece. Now, DeepSeek has shown that you don't necessarily need the top-of-the-line chips reserved for American companies, and you don't need as many of them. There goes NVIDIA's share price, which sank 16%, the greatest single-day rout in market history. Taiwan chip behemoth TSMC also fell 14%. Chinese rivals to American AI companies are now everywhere. TikTok parent ByteDance released Dubao 1.5 Pro, a model it says outperforms OpenAI's. Another Chinese startup, O1.ai, says it's better than GPT-4 and costs only $3 million to build. Maybe sinking $1 trillion, enormous carbon emissions, and oceans of cooling water into training American models was not the way to go. But does this mean Altman and Andreessen and the rest are right, that in order to achieve a promised superior way of life, we must make sure that American companies do not fall behind their Chinese rivals? Well, here's another way to think about it. First, consider that the stock price of any company is a reflection of faith in that company and literally nothing more. In The Market as God, his astounding 1999 article for The Atlantic, the Harvard theologian Harvey Cox told of reading the business press for the first time and realizing that investors and worshipers are part of the same tradition. Here's an excerpt. The lexicon of the Wall Street Journal, business sections of Time and Newsweek turned out to bear a striking resemblance to Genesis, Epistle to the Romans, and St. Augustine's City of God. Behind descriptions of market reforms, monetary policy, and the convolutions of the Tao, I gradually made out the pieces of a grand narrative about the inner meaning of human history, why things had gone wrong, and how to put them right. Theologians call these myths of origin, legends of the fall, and doctrines of sin and redemption. But here they were again, and in only thin disguise. The AI industry wears the same disguise. The promises of a better life, an afterlife, on the other side of wrenching social and economic upheaval made by people who stand to profit from that upheaval, well, that is pretty old school stuff. But let's stand back further from the situation we're in and consider whether the Chinese AI revolution deserves to be front page news or whether other developments deserve that placement. I wrote an entire book about the notion that AI could have enormous benefit for scientific researchers, historians, and agencies seeking to help welfare recipients, but that deploying it for profit will lead us to put aside our creativity, rationality, and agency. To me, the ascent in the App Store of an open-source, free-to-use AI-assisted design in China is a matter of interest, but not a national emergency. What is a national emergency is the freezing of scientific research and scientific communications at the federal level. Trump's new head of Health and Human Services has issued a directive that no federal staff can be hired, no one can travel, and without the authorization of a presidential appointee, no one can communicate health or scientific information to the public. That has left experts like this neuroscientist who posted on TikTok, link in the article, with no choice but to take to social media to report that their National Institutes of Health grant applications and research funding meetings have all been canceled, meaning the sort of life-saving NIH-funded work that gave us critical HIV treatments and 2 COVID vaccines have stopped entirely. This is not a pipeline of research that can be easily restarted, and it's not optional, as the need to develop treatments for threats like avian flu becomes all too real. Also, NIH has until now been actively promoting the use of AI for diagnosing complex afflictions, for drug discovery, and for making the American medical system more responsive and efficient. These are the sorts of humanity-minded, practical explorations of the technology that do not immediately turn a profit, but clearly offer the possibility of a better and longer life for billions of people on the other side. A true offer, a real reward for the faithful. But the emergency being reported today has nothing to do with that. Instead, the language of alarm has been reserved for financial loss. And that says as much about the faithful as it does about the faith. Here's a little bonus content. I'm calling it Hillman Talk University is what we need. I recognize that I can be a relentless bummer on the topic of tech, so I want to leave you with something I consider very positive. I'm depressed about the dead-ended business prospects of creative work in an ecosystem entirely owned by a handful of companies, but creativity itself is unmatched these days, and TikTok has something amazing going on. Dr. Leah Barlow, an assistant professor in the Liberal Studies Department of North Carolina A&T University, posted a TikTok hello and syllabus for students in her Libs 202 Intro to African American Studies course. And it somehow went viral. So viral that not only did she have to post an amazing calm down everyone thank you message, she says in it, I had to put on my good blazer, but the tone she set in which she spoke to all her new followers as if they were actual students in the class sparked a whole movement on the platform. Now, Black academics from all over the country are posting their own course introductions on TikTok, and a fictional but real university called Hillman Talk has emerged. It's presumably named after Hillman College, where the eldest Huxtable went to school on the real world. It was also a women's college until 1942. You can take everything from Gardening 101 to Algorithms, Power and Society to Intro to American Sign Language. And each instructor is faithfully using first day of class vernacular to welcome students and set boundaries. Study groups have formed on Discord, so many that it reportedly had to be paused. There are questions about study guides and homework extensions, and students are posting their class schedule. The language of scholarship and awkward undergrad vibes are amazing. It is a whole amazing thing online, and it fills me with joy. I try to call bad behavior out when I see it, and there's a lot of it these days, but I try to call good behavior out too, and this is the best kind. Here's this week's second piece called Efficiency Will Take, Not Give. What will efficiency provide? More days off? Greater safety? Think again. This chaotic political and economic moment gives the powerful what they want, creates the opportunity for disaster. Early in my career, a colleague of mine, a veteran magazine editor, found himself with a surprising amount of free time. He'd been liberated from a couple of monthly responsibilities, and at a workplace where most of us were grinding until all hours of the night, he became a free spirit, wandering from desk to desk, offering upbeat advice and ideas. I remember him as a typically downcast figure, but now he was full of light. And in the office kitchen one morning, I asked him, in a typical coffee-making moment, how things were going. I've been head down for so long, I haven't been able to think more than a couple days in the future, he said, clearly startled by his good fortune. Suddenly, I'm able to call up writers, sources, start cooking up longer-term projects. It's wonderful. Those of you who've worked in any sort of corporate setting know what happened. He was canned a week or so later. The free time he'd been given was a pre-layoff reassigning of responsibilities. I never encountered him again. I think about him whenever I hear the promise that technology is going to hand us enormous amounts of free time, that the efficiency made possible by something like AI assistant or AI co-author will usher in a better work-life balance, granting us free hours for art, a bit of sculpture, a new language. The predictions about AI's ability to make our lives better by making our professional achievements more efficient are based on the assumption that corporations bestow efficiency on working people as some sort of compensation, rather than using it to burden them further. You see this in reports that do the simple math and conclude that AI could bestow a 4-day work week on 28% of a national workforce, as in one British study. But AI is causing the bosses to expect more from their employees, according to several studies, including this one from Upwork. Quote, 77% of employees report that these tools have added to their workload. Employees report spending more time reviewing or moderating AI-generated content, 39% of them, investing more time learning how to use these tools, 23%, and being asked to do more work as a direct result of AI, 21%. Because, of course, that's how the market works. It's not a garden in which free time is protected and allowed to grow. It's a vacuum that sucks in all free time around it. And under the current economic and political circumstances, when executives are reasserting control over workers, and a record number of billionaires are suddenly running the government, that vacuum is growing stronger and stronger. Some nerdy reading has taught me a name for this dynamic: the Jevons paradox. It's a well-known term for the economists among you, but I only learned about it last year. Between 1776 and the 1880s, engineers in England refined the design of steam engines such that they conserved heat and, as a result, used less coal. But that did not slow down the consumption of coal. It only seemed to result in burning more of it. The English economist William Stanley Jevons thought that the British Empire's reliance on this finite fuel source could eventually be its undoing, and explored the problem in his 1885 book, The Coal Question, which carried the no fucking around subtitle, An Inquiry Concerning the Progress of the Nation and the Probable Exhaustion of Our Coal Mines, and the no fucking around thesis that when the British Empire used coal more efficiently, it was less likely to conserve it and would eventually run out and therefore fall from power. The Jevons paradox turns out to haunt other places where technology offers an improvement in efficiency, only to see market forces erase that improvement by demanding even more of the resource. Scholars have directly linked increases in efficiency to increases in consumption of everything from electricity to water. Now, I've seen people bend over backwards to use the Jevons paradox to explain the effects of drone strikes or the future of software development, but I like to keep it simple. The efficient use of time in your work as an administrative assistant, a mortgage broker, a customer service agent is no different than the efficient use of coal, energy, or water. When this technology makes use of time more efficient, the market will take more of our time. Here, of course, I could go on and on about how the current foundational models like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Llama may only be distractions that do not lead to the artificial general intelligence promised, or about how the climate cannot afford the energy demands the data centers need to power these systems, or that each day our requests for questionable images of sexy, scary grandmas, there's a link piece that you really shouldn't click on, are boiling away lakefuls of precious water as coolant. But let's put that aside for the moment. You'll get plenty about all of that from me in other posts. In a nation where half of us cannot put together $500 in an emergency, when time is saved, its value falls, and the demands on our time increase. At the very moment we should, in theory, have to work less, we're being forced to work more. Ask any store clerk working at a retailer like Target or Walmart. Over the course of more than 30 years, their wages have remained more or less stagnant, while their on-the-job responsibilities have grown more than 10 times. In the written piece, there is a graphic from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that shows the way in which the productivity of each worker has gone up and up and up and up in the retail sector, while their pay has remained more or less the same over the course of 31 years. Meanwhile, the pay-to-work ratio at grocery stores has for some reason been more stable. Do you hear that? That is Jevons thrashing around in his coffin. In fact, I believe that if we're going to give anyone productivity tools that would have Jevons whacking his head into the wall, it should be people who are not immediately beholden to market forces and who are committed to doing redeeming things with them, and that's scientists. But I'll get into that in a later piece. I'm thinking about all of this because of recent moves by OpenAI, which on Thursday hosted a Washington, D.C. event for regulators and lawmakers called Building to Win AI Economics, where the company pushed its policy suggestions and announced a new deal to provide its technology to the national labs for research into cybersecurity, foundational science, and nuclear security. And earlier this week, the company announced ChatGPT Gov, a new AI for government agencies that, according to OpenAI, will enhance service delivery to the American people through AI and foster public trust in this critical technology. ChatGPT Gov will supposedly allow more efficient internal processes, reduce time spent on routine tasks, and summarize and interpret written communications. At the event Thursday, an OpenAI employee demonstrated how a government employee could ask ChatGPT Gov for a 5-week action plan, incorporate feedback, draft a legal and compliance memo about it, and translate it into other languages, according to CNBC. It's all part of a new, cozy relationship between OpenAI and the Trump administration. In fact, cozy is the word 2 Democratic senators used in a letter to Altman on January 17th, when he went on to post on X, accusing him and the CEOs of Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Meta of trying to win influence by spending $1 million of his own money on the president's inaugural fund, pointing out that, quote, you have a clear and direct interest in obtaining favors from the incoming administration. He and the other CEOs are instructed to respond to the letter today. January 31st. Altman's appearance last week to announce a Trump-endorsed SoftBank-funded plan to build vast data infrastructure for the company, nicknamed Stargate. I go on and on about that name in another post. And now this AI for government idea, not to mention OpenAI's burgeoning defense contracts, don't exactly rebut the senator's accusations. In theory, the push for efficiency should and could result in better processes for Americans. Other countries have created technologically advanced civic systems that we would kill for. Estonia, for instance, allows citizens to do nearly everything government-related, not only online, but on their phone, including filing taxes. Phone filing one's taxes there can be done in under 3 minutes. And as the former president who put the system in place, Thomas Hendrik Ilves, once explained to me, that the United States could easily implement such a thing. After all, the government already knows what you have earned a year. Why do you have to pull it all out and show the government information it already has, he asked. But we are not at a moment when U.S. government services are being thickened and improved for the benefit of citizens. Those services are instead being mowed away like grass for political and ideological reasons. In the aftermath of American Eagle 5342's mid-air collision with a military helicopter on Wednesday, which killed everyone involved, it has come to light that the new Trump administration fired top federal employees at the Federal Aviation Administration. If you look online, you can see just how many key positions are listed as vacant on the FAA site. Turns out the administration also implemented a hiring freeze that included new air traffic controllers, ostensibly to purge the FAA as it sought to purge all agencies of DEI initiatives. The ranking Democrats of the House Transportation Committee and Aviation Subcommittee urged him to reverse course a week before the crash, pointing out that the nation was already reeling from a lack of air traffic controllers and warning that the president was endangering Americans. It turns out that leading up to this disaster, the first mid-air collision in the United States in 16 years, the controller working the flight from the Reagan Airport Tower was doing the work of 2 people. As I wrote in my book, The Loop, and to those who've been reading me for a while, I'm sorry to quote myself so often, it's just that my thesis keeps coming back to haunt me in new disguises. Even the best-meaning administrators that implement cost-saving technology can wind up creating a downward spiral of inferior service and automated systems that calcify into an inescapable and dysfunctional bureaucracy. I have met expert after expert who is actively encountering this dynamic. Here, in a quote from the book, is one of them. Professor Michelle Gilman, who teaches law at the University of Baltimore, has spent 2 decades suing on behalf of people living in poverty who have been denied their rights and benefits. And increasingly, she's found that algorithms are at the center of her cases. In a 2020 paper for Data and Society, she offered a guide to the algorithms now being deployed to make decisions in literally dozens of areas of American life, credit scores to public benefits to housing. Gilman points out that algorithms often make life-changing decisions without directly consulting the people whose lives they're changing. An applicant for rental housing, for instance, may be denied based on an algorithmic determination in a tenant screening report, she writes, yet never learn about the basis of the denial. As Gilman put it to me outside a state agency building in Baltimore in 2023, quote, life and death decisions are being made by automated decision-making systems. Those decisions are already stranding Americans in a Kafkaesque loop, she told me, where no one knows how the systems make the decisions they do, and no one is empowered to roll back those decisions. This is the lens through which I view announcements about applying AI to federal agencies. History has shown that technological improvements can greatly improve the quality of life for citizens by making their governments more efficient and more responsive. But right now, civil servants are being emailed demands that they accept vague, sweeping changes to their jobs by February 6th or resign, in a direct repeat of the demands and even the language Elon Musk sent to employees at Twitter before culling 80% of them and reducing the value of that company by 72%. The email to federal employees and the email to Twitter employees were both headed fork in the road. And Wired documented the direct pipeline of, quote, lackeys from Musk's other businesses to the Office of Personnel Management, the federal government's HR department. Meanwhile, President Trump and his cabinet members are taking no responsibility and instead attempting to blame the DEI initiatives, in effect blaming non-white employees, for the death of 60 aircraft passengers, 4 civilian crew members, and 3 military personnel in Wednesday's crash. This is not a time of thoughtful improvements. It is a time of casual destruction and willful misdirection, and nothing empowers the market to take what we value most, like chaos.